Okay, folks, if we could reconvene the council and committee meeting. We are going to be dealing with reports again. And the first report after a break that we're going to deal with is the acceptance of the FCM Climate Change Staff Grant on page 265 of your agenda package. Mr. Baird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our last report from Public Works this evening is regarding a climate change grant that Norfolk County has been awarded from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in the amount of $76,886. The grant is, again, from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and it will provide an existing staff member with the resources required to develop a plan to deal with climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The intent is to use the money to offset an existing staff member with the balance of funds to engage a third-party consultant with subject matter expertise to develop an energy plan. I'm advised as early as today that by completing the plan, which this funding will support, we will then be eligible for future capital projects through the Green Municipal Fund. So sort of a double benefit right there. This has been put together by Michael Simos, our energy coordinator, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have. If you will note on the second page of the report on 266, under the financial services area, and I did speak with Mr. Johnson, it makes the assumption that there will be a shortfall that will need to be funded over 2 years. My advice is that we won't worry about that at this point. The resolution doesn't reflect it anyway, and we will, when we go out to engage a consultant to do that portion of the work, that tender or that RFP will come back to council. I'm hopeful that number will be sufficiently low enough that we don't need to fund any shortfall, but again, that would be back before you. And lastly, in the resolution, we are seeking 2 councillors to join in the exercise, if I don't want to drop that on you right now this evening, but perhaps Mr. Grosel can provide some advice, and maybe we could put forward some names at next week's council meeting, if that provides sufficient time, unless there's interest here this evening.
Okay, questions for Mr. Baird? Councilor Van Passen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was a topic that came up on with the Energy Conservation Committee. It seemed like a pretty good solution because the plan we're going to need sooner or later anyway. We're getting a grant to pay a lot of the staff time that we already have there, and it's going to give us the ability to apply for some different grants to do work that we're probably going to want to do anyhow. So it seemed like a pretty good fit. And I'm sorry those minutes haven't made it up to the council level yet from our Energy Conservation Committee. But if they are looking for volunteers to sit on that, would probably be a good fit for me sitting on that other committee, which probably Mr. Baird was going to recommend anyhow, right?
Okay. Further questions, comments? Nope, there is a recommendation. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Taylor and Councillor Martin is a seconder. I will read it, that PW 19-16, acceptance of FCM Climate Change Staff Grant, be received as information, and that Council accepts a Climate Change Staff Grant in the amount of $76,886 over 2 years from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and that a Norfolk County Climate Change Adaptation Committee be established, and that councillors blank blank be appointed to the Norfolk County Climate Change Adaptation Committee, and further that staff be directed to advertise for citizen appointees to the Norfolk County Climate Change Adaptation Committee. Now, Councillor Van Passen, did you say you'd like to be on this committee?
I didn't say I'd like to be, but I said I would volunteer.
Okay, so your name is one of those blanks. We need a second person, second councillor to sit on there, or the mayor. Councillor Michelle, are you chomping at the bit to be on this committee?
Apparently I am, Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay, so that second paragraph from the end will include the names of Councillor Van Passen and Councillor Michelle. Does everybody understand that? Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. When the advertising is happening, are there other committees that need to still be advertised for, maybe didn't meet their threshold for citizen volunteers?
Clerk?
I believe there is currently an ad out for, we're still looking for the youth representative on the library board and 2 BIAs, so there might be a couple other, but we're still currently out advertising right now.
So it'll all just be tacked together is what I'm getting. It's not a special advertisement?
We may have to add this to an ad, but we'd extend the other ones as well to get more value for our dollar.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. Those in favor, the recommendation is printed. That's carried. Thank you, and thank you to the 2 councilors who favored to go on this committee.
Okay, I'm going to get.
We'll move on to the next report. It's greenhouse gas emissions and climate change planning. Who's got this one? Or is that? Oh, sorry, that's June 5th, 2018. Sorry. I was just looking at the. So it's a Council Program Review Committee Terms of Reference.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you can see, this report is in part housekeeping. Council's policy EBS 39 requires that a staff present a report in terms of reference for any new committee. This was not done for the Council Program Review Committee, as it was a short-term group meant to exist for a 6-month period. So similarly with the task force that Council formed earlier tonight, if that task force was expected to go on for more than a year, we'd say we want to do a more formal process and have a terms of reference. Staff have recommended, both at the 2014 and 2018 Council orientation, to disband this committee, but in both instances, Council is determined to continue on with the Council Program Review Committee. Attached are proposed terms of reference. They differ somewhat in that they're seeking to have Council refer matters to the committee. Previously, this was either a CAO or a staff-led approach, or a kind of the general managers would go with their own kind of ideas of where reductions could be found for this committee. So now what we're suggesting is that it might change and that Council might itself identify what your priorities are for this committee for the next year. As you can see, the CPR committee has always been rooted in budget deliberations. So every time the work starts up, it seems to be directly from the budget meetings from when Mayor Trevally first started this committee in 2010. One theme I've seen through my years here is that every budget, there's a significant amount of repetitive comments made by councillor comments that aren't enshrined in motions. So perhaps referring issues to the CPR committee could be a useful manner to track them and ensure that the follow-up is done and the committee continues the work throughout, because that would help avoid coming back to the next operating budget and still having items to say, well, nothing's happened with what my comments were last budget. So there are a lot of options for council to consider. There's currently 3 members, the mayor, Councillor Martin, and Councillor Van Passen on there. If you wanted to expand anything, or if you want to, you can expand the membership. You can do whatever you want with it. This is mostly just to kind of determine what committee wants this committee to do in the future.
Okay, we're open for questions or discussion. Mayor Chop?
I'm just curious, because the committee had been dormant for so long, and Councillor Martin and I have actually been looking forward to kind of digging into this committee, but how is it that it surfaced for today's agenda? Just curious.
Through you, Chair Columbus. Last term, as you can see in the kind of the background, we'd recommended that it be disbanded, and there wasn't really a good idea of how to go forward with it. And then Councillor Height kept on trying to force it to get it to meet. And we were hoping through that process to really have a discussion at the committee and determine a terms of reference. And when we didn't, it was kind of defunct. So they tried to meet a couple times last term, and it used to be serviced by the CAO's office. So the position that Jill Binkley currently holds used to be the staff support for it. So it was really directly overseen by the CAO and Jill Binkley. And so this is the first time that we've kind of looked at it and said, well, this council, at their orientation, said they want this committee to continue, that you appointed members. So it's just addressing the outcome of council orientation, really.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I guess, as everybody knows, I have come to know former Mayor Trevally through the election, and from my understanding with him, this was never meant to be a short-term committee when it was created during his term, so that seems a bit strange to me, and to my knowledge, he purposely did not include terms of reference so that there would be sort of the maximum flexibility with the committee. So, Mr. Chair, if it's possible, what I would like to do when it comes time, I would like to move that the report be received as information and have a division of question, that the proposed terms of reference of the Council Program Review Committee be approved. I will not be supporting that motion. I think it would be prudent as the committee to meet under the current flexibility of the committee and for this new committee that, because it has been dormant for so long, to come up with our own vision for how we see it moving forward. And so I would also like us today to perhaps schedule a meeting for April the 8th ahead of the Hub Advisory Committee that was taking place at 3:30, that we schedule a meeting for 1:30 for those members of the committee on April the 8th.
Okay, your thoughts on this recommendation are in order. So I guess what you wish to do is just to move that report CEO 1911 be received as information, that's
Correct.
it? Okay, you're moving that. Seconder, Councillor Taylor? Is there any discussion? Those in favor to receive it as information, that's carried. Now, Mr. Clerk.
Could I just clarify, just in terms of the default direction, would you want my office to provide supports, or do you want Ms. Binkley to provide
I think
supports?
just leaving it with Jill would be great
Sure,
for now.
terrific, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so is that an action item then? You leave it as that?
Through you, I'll indicate to Ms. Binkley that there will be a meeting, and obviously the April 8th will be who's the acting CAO? They'll be required to attend as well.
Mr. Soshenkoff is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're completing that report, and before we go in camera, we should go to the rest of the items on page 309, and there are no motions, there's no notice of motion. Was there? Which one is that?
Didn't we have a notice of motion?
Oh, the encroachment agreement, sorry. Page 299.
So,
Your department?
yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, this was directed by the former council. You'll all know it as Malibu Club that had some pretty spectacular demolition down the street there. So council was very supportive of getting this encroachment for the heritage kind of design feature, although it's a new build, it's going to maintain a lot of its previous heritage look. And we're here to recommend its approval. And just as an aside, we are currently reviewing our encroachment process so that we can try to make some aspects of it for a little bit more informal for things that are removable, that wouldn't require a full report. So I expect to have a further update on our encroachment processes for council in the early spring.
Okay, the recommendation is printed on page 300 and 301. Do you have a mover and a seconder? Rabbits and Huffman, move and second. I will read it. That's staff report CAO 19-13 regarding an application for an encroachment agreement for a portion of Robinson Street, Simcoe, adjacent to 110 Robinson Street, Simcoe, be received as information, and that the Corporation of Norfolk County execute and register an encroachment agreement with Vanderlands CS Limited, being the current owner of 110 Robinson Street, Simcoe, to recognize the encroachment of a portico to a new building which will be constructed and encroach on a portion of Robinson Street, and that the encroachment application fee be waived due to council direction on August 28, 2018, resolution number 16, and further that the necessary bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the said encroachment agreement be presented to council for adoption. Any further questions or discussion? Those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, we have no motions, no notices of motion. We'll go to other business. Ms. Miranda, start with you.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Slashenkov. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, we'll resume our budget deliberations, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Baird.
Thing this evening, thank you.
Ms. Disling.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Cridland.
Nothing.
Clerk's Department.
Sir.
Good. Mr. Van Passen. Councilor Van Passen.
Nothing today, sir.
Councilor Huffman.
Nothing today.
Councilor Michelli.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has been brought to my attention that the Win This Space business has started today of Groundswell Co-working, so welcome to downtown Simcoe.
Good.
Jess
Great.
Palmerito.
Thank you. Councilor Geisens. Councilor Rabbits.
Thank you. My other business is just to announce that the spring summer activity guide has been released. It looks great. Our staff has done an amazing job at showcasing all the fun activities and different events that are upcoming this next season. I just wanted to let everyone know, if you haven't already gotten a copy in the newspaper, you can always check it out online by going to Norfolk County's website and just searching Norfolk County Activity Guide. Thank you.
Mayor Chop.
Just to let everybody know, we are actively pursuing getting an extension from the M&R on the $500,000 that they've offered for the gas wells. It's looking more and more like that is perhaps an unrealistic timeline, and I certainly don't want to see the money not going to a solution. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, with Mr. Barrett's office, we might see an extension of those funds.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that the county, through various arenas and rec centers, will be looking at renewing or revisiting the contracts for food services and whatnot. So I just wanted to make a note and put out an expression of interest. If anyone is interested in having that conversation, that they should contact the county, and a more formal notice will go out later.
Okay. Thank you. And I have no new business, no other business, but we are going to go in camera and deal with this huge document. Yes, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Chair, I would actually like to defer the appointments until council meeting next week, and suggest that we meet earlier at 2 p.m. Next week. This was discussed at orientation with the clerk's office, and I understand that there perhaps was some confusion. That while the process has been traditional in the past, that staff have sort of put forward their recommendations, that we were a new council that was brought in on a change mandate, and I think it's difficult to be delivered a document of that size on a Friday, and for us to actually be able to go and review who the applicants are that have come forward. As one example in there, I can see one applicant that specifically stated that they did not wish to be on two committees, and they've been placed on two committees. And so I think it would be prudent of us to be able to take home that big package and put our own thoughts into who we also view as the appropriate selections for those committees. So I would like to defer that item to council next week at 2 p.m.
So we do have the item that was to be discussed under other business, or in camera, deferred. Do you have a seconder? Councilor Martin is a seconder of that recommendation. This will be next week at the full council meeting?
Well, I was thinking at 2 p.m. start.
Okay, 2 p.m. start. Any concerns about that to any of the council members? Okay, Councilor Rabbit.
I would prefer meeting at the regular time. We've been making pretty good time with our meetings and getting adjourned before 9, and if we can keep on pace with that, it would save myself scheduling some time off. I realize you give me a week's notice, and I do appreciate that, but I'd like to stick with the regular meeting time if everyone would be amenable to that.
Right, the clerk's reminded me that there's another meeting from 3:30 till 5 o'clock.
The joint RFAB meeting is happening at next week's council meeting, so there's also an RFAB meeting scheduled for 3:30 till 5. Roughly, I mean, I don't know how long it'll take to go over the joint package, but we slotted an hour and a half for it. So just so council's aware, and there's, I'm not saying these, you could still have enough time. I think there's 6 planning applications. You could definitely have enough time. You just might not be able to get it at it till the end of the meeting.
You're saying we'd have enough time if we started at 3 o'clock?
Through you, yeah, I don't think that you wouldn't necessarily have enough time. You just probably wouldn't be able to get to it between 3 and 3:30. You'd probably have to deal with it at the end of the evening, but I mean, it's your last meeting until March 19th, so if it does run a bit late, that's the reality. We'll get through it.
Okay. Councilor Rabbit?
Well, if everyone's all right with moving it to the end of our agenda, this larger document here, I'd be agreeable to that. If I get some pushback, I guess I'll be there for 2, but I'd appreciate if we could move it to the end of the agenda. That way it doesn't conflict with our RFAB meeting.
Okay. Further discussion, Councilor Michele.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if we could maybe split the difference and go for 2:30? That'd be reasonable?
2:30? Okay, so are we saying that we're going to deal with this in-camera stuff at 2:30, or we're going to call the meeting, the full council meeting, to order at 2:30?
Mr. Chair, my intent was to call the entire council meeting at 2:30.
Mr. Clerk, any comment? No. How's everybody feel about that? Councilor Martin?
If I may, Councillor Michele, I think that the RFAB citizens group is coming to meet with council at 3, so if you preferred to do a 2:30 start, I would just suggest that we maybe address some of this in closed session, if that's your preference of 2:30, but the citizens committee would be joining us at 3:30, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't aware that there was a citizens group attending, so I will withdraw my request.
Okay, so are we at 2 o'clock right now, or 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock, okay. We're at 3 o'clock, and we'll deal with this document perhaps at the same hour next week, right? Who knows? Everybody in support of that? I had a mover and a seconder, didn't I? Seconder? Yep. So we'll call the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I think that covers it. Thank you for your participation and cooperation. We'll see you tomorrow morning. If you can please retain your documents, take them home with you, and bring them back next week.
Yeah, next week. Save the trees.